people will never say a dollar. Only a few rich man will start to get richer. To the prime minister, be happy, write a letter because
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
God have mercy.
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
This a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Not an inch, not a foot, not a centimeter. We not go give it to Guatemala because look what them do to the people of my color. If them speak too loud, sure to get murder. Look what them do to the Indian Maya. Holy for them massacre. La mismo presidente quiere we agua because this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Believe if you need me, if you need a soldier, just send for the Cooper, cause I'm a true warrior. Just send for Daddy Tracy and Rankin Jr. Just send for Bernie Mac and Kenny M. my brother. Send for Andy P, send for the Mad Rocker. Just send to Stone Jam, you are the commander. Because this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. So listen to the lyrics where Papa a chat. Some people only see ya, some see further than that. From my observations, they plan off the what, yes. Plan off the what to make a quick attack. But if it come to that, me I go pick up the gat, me I go lick enough shot on the militant. Me I go shoot the Indian, me I go shoot the black. Me just lick enough shot on the militant. What? Me want you carry this message straight to the top. Me here we have a lot of island on the sea, man. Because this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Papa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we. This one goes out to all patriots, all people who love them country bad, love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Papa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. I know we should always help one neighbor, especially in time of a natural disaster. But this is not the case with Guatemala because the poor people will never say a dollar. Only a few rich man will start to get richer. To the prime minister, be happy, write a letter because
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
God have mercy.
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
This a fi we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we with a
And
fear.
welcome to the
Nobody
next
give it to
edition of Sunday Review
not an
for
inch.
this morning, April 26, 2020. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We are Skyping our talk shows from Krem Television. It's being simulcasted on Krem Radio, and that is because of the COVID-19 reality, and we're being responsible individuals by keeping our social distance. So this morning, our co-hosts will be Dwight Neal, Skyping in from the capital of Belize, Belmopan. And I know they say no Belmopan City, no, because they won't want. Good morning,
Belmopan
Dwight.
City, good morning, yeah. Belmopan City, I have to give the place the props.
Listen to me.
Anyway,
We're not going down the road this morning. All right, good. But it's good to see you, Dwight. And our guest this morning, it's not our first time on Sunday Review. It's her first time in the capacity that she's appearing. We have our sister, Ruby Reyes, who identifies as a LGBTQI activist. Good morning, Ruby.
Good morning, Yaya. Morning, Dwight. Morning, Belize. Welcome to Krem Sunday Review. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Yaya and Dwight, for having me.
Nice and bright up with their colors. I'm loving it.
Well, LGBT people, we the colorful people, so I embrace the colors on this gloomy Sunday morning.
Respect, sister. How are you being this morning, Ruby?
Well, this morning I'm a, I have a mixed feelings. I don't know what the outcome of this, what the how Belize will receive this talk. But I'm excited about it. I think it's long overdue, and I'm more excited that it's on the Krem platform, and I'm happy that you are the one taking the lead to, have this show being broadcasted. But I have some mixed feelings. I'm a bit scared because I'm not sure, the depth of what we're going to discuss, and I'm not sure, what might come out, especially when I become, you know, immersed in the conversation. But like I said, I'm excited because I think this is a conversation that is long overdue. It has to be had. So
Respect for your honesty, Ruby. How are you being this morning, Dwight?
Well, trying to survive. We've been suffering almost a week and a half with a lot of. Well, first of all, the heat has been very oppressive. 90s and hundreds. I think the last couple of days have been 102, 105 kind of numbers. But in addition to that, it has been aggravated by some really inconsiderate people who have been burning milpas all around Belmopan, regardless of the fact that they have been asked not to. And so the smoke and the debris, all the particulate matter in the air has been really, really inconvenient. And in the past years, I suspect that I didn't feel it as much, although it was being done, because most of the time we're moving around. And so we're not in one particular spot. But now, because you're confined to your homes or to a particular location, you don't got no way to go to escape it. And so it becomes really, really oppressive. And the thing is that during the night, you don't get any better. So I think that'll be my break for today, maybe for the remainder of the week. But I think hopefully it improves. I saw that it was a little overcast this morning, so hopefully it improves. Hopefully the temperature goes down a little. I think after hundreds I could tolerate 90 now. So we have to see how that works. But otherwise it has been okay. I've been rather productive at home. It has given me time to do a lot of things around the house and a lot of desk work that I have not been able to accomplish the way I want to for a long time. So yeah, it has been um, kind of okay for me.
Dwight, there's been some pushback and Ruby on that SI that was passed. I believe it was an SI from some indigenous people for sure, because it would be a violation of their ways of being.
of
Now,
being
it
right.
makes me think of the similarly for roots people, everyday people who live by hustling. And it's for me, I understand the reason why there's a need to do something because of the concern of the virus spreading. At the same time, I don't know how much consideration is seriously given to people ways of being to create some harmony or to even conversate or to connect with people to get their
All right.
input.
You,
Like
ha-
the
you have a very valid point, Yaya. And as I said, this is not the first time that we've suffered anywhere in the country from smoke challenges regarding smoke from milpas and farms that are being burned and prepared for the planting season. However, what normally used to happen was that it used to be phased over a period. So from way back in maybe March or early March, or some people as early as February would have started to clean and burn. What apparently is happening now is that everybody is doing it at the same time, because I guess because of the state of emergency, the COVID-19 thing, the fact that you can't move the way you want. So any available opportunity is taken advantage of. And so where once upon a time you may have had maybe one or two or three fires during the course of the day, or maybe the course of several days, now you're having 10, 12. I looked at a map last night, and we had like about 15 fire around Belmopan out of the 200 and something that is throughout the entire country. I wouldn't want to live the Cayo or maybe in a Pine Ridge right now, because the Vaca Plateau area is almost all you're seeing from the satellite maps are just fires. All right, especially and down south in Colombia. So I think what has happened is that it's It's where all of these things have come together at the same time. And then in the incessant heat, it just kind of aggravates the whole situation. So I have no problem with farmers wanting to burn. I think what we need to do as responsible citizens is to come up with some solution, which I think Yaya was hinting towards, about how we can manage this. All right, we either do that or we outlaw burning altogether and come up with new methods for doing land preparation, which I don't think is a viable option either. So again, it comes back to what you're saying, Yaya. We have to come up with some mechanism that we can discuss and find solutions. We cannot, where once upon a time we had one, two, three, maybe four milpas, now we have dozens. And all of these cannot be allowed to burn at the same time because it creates a health hazard. And that's just my concern, no?
Put my mic back on.
Uh,
Respect, Dwight.
your mic gone again, yeah.
It's recommended for us to mute our mics when we're not speaking. So when it's time for me to speak, it takes a little minute for the mic to be turned back on. Thanks for that input, Dwight. My intentions in having the conversation this morning, focusing on the LGBTQI community as a vulnerable and marginalized community, is because as a media worker, I have failed. Oftentimes, when we see or hear about the LGBTQI community in Belize, it's oftentimes in a newscast, and the focus may be on a conference that's happening, a court case that is going on, or a crime that may have happened. And so and as media workers and as people who work for the media and take responsibility for the types of stories that are told, how they are told, and how often they're told, like our sister, the Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie would say, the danger of the single narrative is that there's some truths in it, yet it creates stereotypes and it doesn't tell the whole story. And so for the number of times as media workers, we've seen stories about the LGBTQI in the media, for us to not have created a space to listen, to hear of someone's story, just as I would have created space in the past for when our Black brothers, for example, are consistently stereotyped as if they're the only ones who commit crime in this country. And it's primarily Black brothers who other Black brothers and people of color as police officers would profile and arrest. It's because oftentimes media houses show one singular story about them over and over again. And so it influences what people think about Black males, as opposed to being balanced in stories about Black brothers and showing the diversity of them as human beings. Similarly, the LGBTQI community, there's been a single narrative about them for the most part throughout Belize media, and it's told repetitively. It's told primarily from one position. And so it's that single narrative that has taken root. And so to be I'm admitting my failure as a journalist for not being courageous enough. Because as Ruby said at the beginning of the show, I know that it's fear that has stopped a lot of us from creating the space, from having the conversation publicly, because we know we have a homophobic culture in Belize. That is a truth. And our intentions in having the conversation this morning, what really sparked it for me was last Sunday, one of our brothers, a human being, a Black gay brother by the name of Ulysses Terry, died in Willows Bank last Sunday afternoon, April 19th. And prior to his death, he posted several videos on his Facebook page that got thousands of views, thousands of views. I don't know what inspired people to listen and to watch those videos. I don't know if after listening to it or watching Ulysses Terry's video, if it created an opportunity for individuals to rethink and see people from the LGBTQI community as human beings, first and foremost. Yet it was Ruby's post on her Facebook page that really connected with me and inspired me to reach out to Ruby. I know Ruby as a sister, and have a conversation with her, and we understood the sensitivity of this conversation, yet the need to have it, especially during the COVID-19 period, because it's a time when I would hope that most Belizeans would become more compassionate towards other beings. So with me framing the intention of today's show and the timing of the show, let me ask you, Ruby, if you could please define the acronym LGBTQI. Yeah, I added the I because oftentimes when I hear people speak in Belize or I see stories reported about that particular community, the I is not included. So if you could tell us what LGBTQI, the acronym stands for, Ruby, and maybe why the I may not be used often in the Belizean narrative.
All right. So I have to unmute my mic as well, so it's taking. All right, so I am assuming my mic has been unmuted because it literally took me a minute to unmute my mic. But yeah, I think you started with something very powerful, which is the influence of the media and the danger of that single narrative. I think our narrative as LGBT persons living in Belize has definitely changed. I can say that there is, compared to what has happened in the past, there is much more tolerance, there is much more visibility. And for me personally, as an activist, my visibility is my resistance. And it's through my visibility that I do my activism. As it relates to the acronym LGBTQI+, it actually captures terms as it relates to gender identity and sexual orientation. So let's begin with the L. L stands for lesbian, right? And I would like to engage you and Dwight in this conversation in terms of using both of you as my points of reference. So because I want to break this down so that people understand, right? So lesbian, yeah. A lesbian is somebody who is romantically and sexually attracted to other self-identified women. So you're talking now about sexual orientation, right? Who I'm emotionally and sexually attracted to. So in this case, a lesbian would be me, Ruby, being attracted to you, Yaya, per se. So let's move to the next term, which is G, gay. Gay is a term that is used, again, sexual orientation, used to identify, both men and women in the gay community, but it mostly refers to romantic and sexual attraction involving two men, right? So gay can be used to refer to the entire LGBT community or the gay community, but it's mostly used to refer to sexual relations between two men, all right? Then, so that would be Dwight and some other male. Bisexual. A bisexual is somebody who is romantically or sexually attracted to or involved with people of the same gender or another gender or both genders, or is open to sexual attraction from both genders. So I'm attracted to Yaya and I'm also attracted to Dwight. So that would be an example of bisexual. Then transgender. Now this term isn't used to define to describe sexual orientation, but it's used as a term to describe gender identity. And transgender or trans-identified is an expression or behavior that is different from the one assigned at birth. So your sex assigned at birth has to do with your genitalia, right? And then your gender identity, expression, or behavior is how male or feminine you are based on the sex that you've been assigned at birth. Now, transgender is whereby the sex that you have been assigned at birth differs from your gender identity or expression. So, for instance, you, Yaya, you have your hair cut, right? You have your hair short. That's a gender expression that is associated with males. But in this case, you're not transgender because you don't identify as a male. You're only using that male expression of having short hair. So it's more than just your expression, but it's also how you identify. All right? Is that clear, or do you have any questions as it relates to that term? Because transgender can be a bit iffy for some people. Dwight, you have any question?
No, I think it's fairly clear. You're basically saying that I may have been gender assigned as male at birth, but I identify personally and in my mannerisms and my outward expression in the community as female. Yeah, but to what extent does trans include gender reassignment?
All right. Now, that is something that is still being it's an issue that's still being resolved within the LGBT community, because there are some people who believe that if you're a transgender, you would have to go through a full transition, hormone therapy, gender assignment, surgery, that you have to go through the full 9 years for you to be transgender. While there are other persons who say that, you know what, it's not about all of that. It's about how I feel and how I identify. It doesn't have to be an outward expression. It can be something, inward. So that's where it becomes a bit iffy, because there isn't, consensus throughout the LGBT community as to, is transgender really somebody who has done the full transition, or can I be transgender and not have hormone therapy, not have gender reassignment surgery? So that's a question that we're still exploring and we're still trying to understand. Now, you have transvestites, and transvestites are persons who cross-dress. They're mostly referred to as your cross-dressers, but they cross-dress for economic reasons. So they do it because of entertainment. And as soon as they've taken off the drag, or the attire, whatever, they go back to self-identifying as a man or as a woman. So those persons do still fall under the transgender umbrella, but they have been classified as transvestite because while they dress as the opposite sex, they don't identify as the opposite sex. So I might dress as a woman, but I don't identify as a woman. I just dress as a woman for entertainment purposes, but I still fall under that transgender umbrella.
Ruby, you are being the consummate educator. Ruby by profession is an educator, and I really appreciate you teaching as a popular educator. You're trained as a educator from the Western pedagogy, yet your method of teaching is a popular education method of teaching, and I could relate to that because you look to people's lived experiences to connect with the concept that you're sharing. What I didn't know until you said it just now, which was a reveal for me, is that never once did I think, when I chopped my locks, went bald, and decided to grow my hair back, that having short hair, based on the country and the culture that we live in, is an outward expression identified or attached to males. That's why you hear this derogatory term, and it's a derogatory and offensive term when people say, and I'm talking about people within your family, community members, and I'm not the only person they said it to. They said it to other sisters, that you got man head.
Right.
And no, I did not understand that before this moment, Ruby. And so that's another reason why it's so important to have these kinds of conversations, so people can understand how We say and do things because it's taught to us, whether intentional or unintentional. We're taught to be biased or to be prejudiced or to discriminate against people. We're not born that way. We're taught to be that way. So,
I
light bulb
just,
moment for me, Rubes. Thanks.
sorry. I just want to interrupt before we allow Ruby to continue because I think the point you made is very, very significant. I remember during my more rebellious years in high school, I think this would have been third farm and fourth farm in Dangriga, there was this afro craze. Everybody had an afro. And one way to make your afro be bigger was to cornrow it. And then I realized that, Sonny, the cornrow easier than the afro because once the cornrow then you do nice and you look after it, it looks good. But your afro, you go and you lean up some way and the afro get mashed up and then you have to start all over again. And so I used to keep in my cornrows for extended periods, and my mom used to tell me, please say one of these nights and cut it off because I don't want no girl looking man in my house, girl looking boy in my house. All right? And I thought my mother was very liberal in her thinking for that time. But she said, plain, you can't grow no long hair because that is not what we are about. And so I think it's important that we understand how people look at us in our society because of culture and tradition. Anyway, go ahead, Ruby, please.
Stick up in one moment. So now you got take it to another level now, Dwight. Because now that makes me think about, again, the continuous reports we get, in particular about Black people, Black young youths wearing their natural hair as the Creator made them and it grows out of their scalp. That at schools, in particular high schools, are told that the school rule says that you cannot have long hair. And it's to understand that not because there's a rule or a law means that it's fair or ethical. And at the time when rules and laws are created based on the social norm, and social norms doesn't mean that it's fair, influences the rules and the laws, because it's human beings who think these things, and then eventually the human beings who are in power. So power has a lot to do with what is accepted, what is shown on the television, who is listened to on the radio. Power has a lot to do with bias and prejudice. So, wow, Ruby, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do as an educator. Spark independent thought.
Yeah, spark the debate. You get that thing going. But go ahead, please.
But ultimately, it comes down to this fact. The fact that norms are not static. It changes, it evolves along with society. I remember I had this conversation with my mom and I told her I wanted to cut my hair short, and she basically insulted me similarly with you about that man head thing, that it will take away from your beauty, it's not feminine, it's more masculine, and this whole debate about why I should not cut my hair. But the fact that as women we have the liberty to cut our hair without consulting a husband is a breakthrough in how norms have evolved to the times. Women wearing long pants, that's another testament of how much society has evolved to meet the times. And that's why for me it's amazing that people continue to hold on to the old ways of doing things, seeing that it's no longer applicable to our current society. Something simple as men these days boring both their earlobes. That was looked upon in the past as something, that's not quite acceptable. But these days, most young men bore their ears. That was something that was considered feminine back in the days, so it speaks to the evolution of norms within society. Now that we stopped at the T, now we're moving to the 2S. And the 2S isn't a term, it's a term that has been recently added to the LGBT acronym, and 2S stands for two-spirited. And I'm really happy, and as a history major and a history teacher, I am so happy of the inclusivity and the diversification of the term, because two-spirited is an exclusively indigenous Native American term used to refer to persons who have a blend of male and female spirits. I mean, we know that we're spiritual beings. We're made up of energy and all of that. And you have these persons in society, in indigenous societies, who are two-spirited in terms of having both male and female, tendencies, behaviors, or neither male or female tendencies and behaviors. So that's what two-spirited does. Is it captures that phenomenon within the indigenous communities. So that's really cool, because we know Native Americans and indigenous communities are vulnerable groups, similarly to the LGBT community. So it's a breakthrough that they have been added to the acronym. Then
What is the I for?
the I is intersex. Intersex describe people who are born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not fit male or female. There is no clear definition that there is no clear indication, that this baby is male, or there is no clear indication that this baby is female. Like, you can't tell from the genitalia of the child. And sometimes it's when the child grows older and hormones start to kick in that you really can't tell if this child is male or female. So that's what intersex points. Those persons who are born with reproductive or sexual organs that does not fit the typical definitions of male or female. So
what's the plus sign for?
And the plus sign is to include all different identities outside of those that are in the LGBTQI spectrum, or within that acronym. So they would be added to it. So you put the plus to include those persons so that there isn't this long acronym.
Are you is that your daughter?
Yes, she has decided to invade my space. Say hi and then you have to leave. Say hi to Miss Yaya.
Hi.
Hi.
Right.
What's her name, Dwight?
Nyla.
Nyla. Hi, Nyla.
Nyla is from Lion King, right?
I think so, but it's Arabic in origin. It's supposed to mean courageous or successful or something like that.
Who named your child, Dwight?
Yes, not
Not
me.
you.
I was forcefully removed from that discussion. They say you don't give them a last name already, so everything.
Share to balance. See, there goes the gender again. The gender dominance.
No, that is what I was told.
No, I'm talking about oftentimes when we have the conversation about gender, you could turn your camera off one time when you wipe your face moves. I do the same thing too.
So the whole and so you know why everybody see that we sweat too?
In having when you do watch yourself on TV and your face just moist, it's not appealing for other people to look at. So whenever you need to wipe your face, you could turn your camera off and then turn it back on. We are still hearing your audio though. And so before we close out this first segment, when we talk about gender, again, we look at, and I'm really appreciative of Ruby being an educator and making the connections with how it is that we arrive at norms and how they change. And so the truth is that with many Western communities, societies, that when someone who identifies as a woman chooses to marry someone who identifies as a man, that you must then give up your last name, which at all times is the last name of a man. So before I got married, and here it's called your maiden name, was Marin, who is my father. That's my father's surname. And so for women, you're always carrying the surname of a male because it's a patriarchal society that we live in, where it's primarily males or people who identify as males, and primarily being a Western construct, European males. because we were colonized primarily by European males, a lot of what informs who we are from a European perspective. And that is why when you hear us using the wording that we may be physically free, but mentally enslaved, mentally still colonized, is from someone else informing us of who we are. In the absence of our traditional African values, and the continent of Africa has 50 something nations. And so you have different spiritual, religious values, ways of being. And so salute to the inclusion of the indigenous people ways of being double spirited, and to bring the conversation as we wrap this first segment, Dwight, and you sharing about your daughter's name, and I'm saying salute to your partner, and I'm intentionally, again, this gender thing, not saying your wife, because when you say she's your wife, it gives her whole being a validity as being married to you. And outside of being married to you, she's a whole being. So I intentionally use the word life partner. Make I hear you.
Don't worry, we got through that debate already. Yeah. We've already been down that road. But before you answer, Ruby, let me just ask, because I think you didn't touch on the Q. Maybe right. You could come back when you come back from the break. Maybe you could go into that. But I also wanted to touch on the Q and go back to the I, because there are some questions and I don't say concerns, but some confusion in my own head that I think I need having somebody like you readily available would be able to clarify a little bit.
Respect, what were you going to say, Ruby?
No, I was just going to say that I like the word partner because using wife is exclusive, and being in a same-sex relationship, we don't. It's difficult to coin who you are with, and it reminds you of the discrimination that we face, because as being in a same-sex relationship, I'm living in Belize, I'm not able to have a wife. I can never have a wife unless, we take up the state and fight for the laws to be amended. So using partner is sensitive to my circumstance and my situation, and it helps in using gender neutral terms as a means of being inclusive, right? Because when you use wife, when you use husband, you're automatically excluding the LGBT community, because we don't have that right as yet. And that's a way of you flaunting your privilege more or less in my face by saying my wife.
I don't see it quite that way, but that's a point where we disagree upon when we come back from the break.
It's interesting that you should say that, Rubes, and I'll say this and then we're going to break, because now that you said that, it immediately brought back the memory that when I would say to people, my partner, that in private, they would later tell me that when I use that word to describe my partner, the person assumed that I was in a same-sex relationship because I didn't use the traditional description for the person I married.
Well, let me ask,
again, it shows the dominance. It shows the dominance of heterosexual people, because and that's what compassion and empathy is. It's when you can genuinely hear and connect with another being as a human being with no judgment. We may have different value systems, but that does not mean that I ought not to treat you as a human being. With that, we'll take our first break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Be the hero the world needs right now. Wash your hands.
When you bank your way, it's amazing how much time you have to enjoy the more important things in life. You have time for priceless moments, time to indulge, time to unwind, time to take in the view, time to make memories. Use any of these services and have time for the things that matter most. Bank your way and enjoy the convenience. Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Smart is fully prepared for the demands on our network to facilitate those working from home and for customers to continue communicate with friends and family. With the entire country at home, our team has pushed for more innovative services and promotions like our double data along with new ways of purchasing mobile services via our app and agents countrywide. Smart is proud to have dedicated staff working from home as well as out in the field to keep communication flowing. Customers can also follow our online fitness, science, comedy, and other great segments to continue being active at home. Smart has also sponsored the Ministry of Health free hotline, along with gifting all our frontline medical personnel a prepaid number with $50 credit to stay in contact in these times. Be assured we are with you and look out for more weekly promotions on SMS, voice, and data. Be smart and be safe.
Your Belize City Council continues to work towards building a safer, healthier, and more efficient society for all residents to enjoy. The latest modification we've made is the installation of the new traffic light system at the corner of Neil Penn Road and Central American Boulevard. To ensure that the new system is risk-free for all citizens, we have prepared some traffic safety tips that should be kept in mind while traveling in the area. To our drivers, remember Neil Penn Road is now a one-way street, meaning it is illegal to turn left onto Neil Penn Road from the Central American Boulevard when driving in the direction of Cesar Ridge Road. It is illegal to turn right onto Neil Penn Road from the Central American Boulevard when driving in the direction of the Balkan Bridge. The Belize City Council, always about the people.
If you want to help save the world, sneeze into your elbow. Be the hero the world needs right now. Wash your hands.
When you bank your way, it's amazing how much time you have to enjoy the more important things in life. You have time for priceless moments, time to indulge, time to unwind, time to take in the view, time to make memories. Use any of these services and have time for the things that matter most. Bank your way and enjoy the convenience. Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
A Mandala notice. Our advertisers, sellers, and readers are advised that due to the Labor Day holiday on Friday, May 1st, there will only be the Friday issue of a Mandala, which will hit the streets on Thursday morning, April 30, 2020.
Because this a we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. I know we should always help our neighbor, especially in time of a natural disaster. But this is not the case with Guatemala, because the poor people will never see a dollar. Only a few rich man will start to get richer. To the Prime Minister be happy, write a letter because
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans. Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
This a we with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a we with a fear. Nobody give it to Rankin Jr. Just send for Bernie Mac and Kenny M. Me brother. Send for Andy P. Send for the Mad Rocker. Just set to stone jam, you are the commander. Because this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. So listen to the lyrics where Papa a chat. Some people only see ya, some see further than that. From my observations, they plan off the guats, yes. Plan off the guats to make a quick attack. But if you come to that, me I go pick up the gat, me I go lick enough shot on the militant. Me I go shoot the Indian, me I go shoot the black. Me just lick enough shot on the militant. What? Me want you carry this message straight to the top. Me here we have a lot of island on the sea, man. Because this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. No, this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Papa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar. Because this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Papa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar. Because this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. No, this a fi we, with a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. I know we should always help our neighbor, especially in time of a natural disaster. But this is not the case with Guatemala, because the poor people will never say a dollar. Only a few rich man will start to get richer. To the prime minister, be happy, write a letter.
Welcome back to the second segment of our 15th edition of Sunday Review for 2020. I'm your host, Yaya Marin Coleman. Our co-host this morning is Dwight Neal, who is in Belmopan, capital of Belize. Whatever. Who vex. And our guest this morning is our sister Ruby Reyes, who is an LGBTQI plus activist. Welcome back. Ruby, before we went to break, you at the top of the first segment, you were sharing what the acronyms meant. You did not get a chance to share what the Q represented. Please do so now.
All right, yeah. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers, if you're still with us. So the Q is used to refer to two terms. One is queer and one is questioning. So we leave space within the LGBT community for those persons who are still exploring their sexual orientation, their sexual identity, and all of that. So questioning is for those persons who are questioning their gender, their sexual identity, their sexual orientation, and all those other terms that fall under sexuality. While queer now is an umbrella term like gay that is used to refer to the entire LGBT community. However, there is some controversy with the term queer because in the past it was used to as a derogatory term for LGBT persons to think of themselves as the other. But now it has been reclaimed to just encompass the entire LGBT community. Like I said, when you say queer, you think, all right, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. You think of all of that when you use the term queer.
Let me share a text that I received. A caller called Krem Radio, because this show is also being simulcasted on Krem Radio, and stated that they found that Ruby was generalizing, that Ruby gave the impression that all women, particularly African, all have long hair. Many African women's hair is short, not by choice, but by nature. Ruby is out of order on that point. In addition, many women in India wore and wear a pants beneath their dress or robe. Respond, please, Ruby.
Okay, so I don't think I was generalizing. I'm referring to the terms as they are. Maybe my example would have been generalizing, but again, I'm making references to my experiences and to the context of in which we live. I mean, we live in Belize, where we have adopted a lot of, like you rightfully said, yeah, Western ideals, Western norms. And within that context of the way we've been colonized, we have associated short hair as as masculine, and we have also associated wearing long pants as something that's masculine. Of course, in other cultures, they have different connotations. For instance, wearing a skirt in Irish cultures, I hope I'm not getting that wrong, where they wear a kilt, which is somewhat like a skirt. So of course, this there is room for flexibility, and by no means am I saying that this is the way it is and this is the way it will always be. This is all subject to change. It's subject to where you are. You know, it's just us trying to make sense of the terms as they are, and me using those examples to try to bring the message across better.
Respectfully,
Don't mean to offend anybody.
respect.
I
Ruby,
think
can
you're
you?
on point, Ruby, if I may, yeah, because yes, there are other cultures that do a variety of things, and in fact, in some of the African cultures I was just reading recently, particularly East Africa, I think, the men are usually the ones who put the elaborate hairdresses in. All right. But as you rightly said, we are in Belize. We were colonized, as Yaya keep reminding us, by the British, by a European culture that tends to think that certain things are male oriented and female oriented, as the case might be. And that is our reality. So I understand where the person who sent the text is coming from, but they have to understand that our reality is Belize and our reality is Eurocentric. It's coming
Which
out
is
of
why
Europe.
it's so important to teach African and indigenous studies in our classrooms. Because outside, because what we're told is not our stories. They're not our stories. And so that's why it's so important for us to move away from that single narrative of European stories for a country that is primarily people of color, and create a space like SJC is doing to teach African and Maya studies, as UBAD over 50 years ago through the Rock Declaration demanded that African and Indigenous studies be taught in the classroom. So it just shows why it's so important for us to know who we are, because if we don't know who we are, then other people define us. And then we as individuals take on that narrative and claim it as if it's the only truth or the genuine truth. Ruby, and I'm loving how the conversation is going so far, I must say. Ruby, can you share with us, how did you come into your awareness to identify yourself as a lesbian?
Yeah, it was a very painful journey. And it's something that I'm still grappling with. It's a journey that I'm still on. I don't think I've reached my destination as yet. But it really came at a time when I was in a transition in my life. I mean, I had just recently moved from PG to Belize City, and I was teaching at an all-girls school at the time, and the influence of friends, you know, I began meeting people, and I met this person, and she was, I mean, I've never felt that way towards somebody of the same sex. That attraction was not only sexual, but it was emotional as well. And so I was a bit conflicted by my feelings, and I had to, you know, go through a process of self-awareness and self-identity to be able to express how I was feeling. Fortunately, I was in a group of friends who were very open to the idea, and I met some people who actually assisted me with exploring who I was at that time for me to come to being able to identify as being a lesbian or being pansexual or being bisexual. I'm still struggling with that. I'm learning as I you know, as I get new information, I'm learning and I'm adapting. So it really began with me being put in this situation whereby I fell in love and I couldn't explain what I was feeling. I had no real like connections with lesbians and the LGBT community before, but this was what I was feeling. And at the time, that was what it was going to be. You're a lesbian. But I'm not quite a lesbian. I don't only have attraction to only women. I have attraction to, I found out that I'm a demisexual. I have to have that emotional connection before there's any sexual attraction or anything else like that. So it's a way of, it was really me coming into being, into myself and exploring who I was. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't a difficult journey because I aligned very quickly with an LGBT organization by the name of Petal. And Petal was offering a lot of support to people like me who were questioning themselves at that time. And so by participating in those conversations, participating in those forums, participating in those workshops, it gave me a better idea of who I was and who I wasn't. So as an educator, I know the importance of allowing students to explore who they are. And it doesn't have to be anything sexual. It doesn't have to be anything, anything too controversial, but letting students know that these people exist and that you need to respect these people. And if you identify as one of those persons, it's okay. So that was what it was like for me, having the literature available, having the opportunities available to explore who I was, and then having the support system. Because if my mom, who I came out to first, even before I came out to anybody else, if she wasn't as receptive as she was, my journey would have been very differently. In fact, being at an all-girls school and exploring my sexuality was it was very draining on me, because there were a lot of rumors going around, there were some accusations, and people come with their own ideas of who you are. I mean, homosexuality has been equated with bestiality and pedophilia. That's not who I am. So it really was taxing on me to be able to go through the motions, defining who I am and who I am not, and then coming to terms with that. Because knowing who you are and coming to terms with who you are two different things. I mean, some people know who they are deep down, but because of the society in which they live in, they remain closeted, right? So it was a journey for me, and I must say that it's a journey that I'm still traversing on.
What do you mean when you said that you're not only attracted, my understanding, what I heard you said just now, to women, you're demi. What does that mean? So are you attracted to men?
I was waiting my turn.
All right.
Demisexual?
Yeah.
Talk to the girlfriend.
Okay. Hold Dwight accountable for calling you that. You see, listen to me. It's those same, and this is another part of gender bias and the culture and beliefs. And that's why I get very offended when anyone calls me a girl or gal. Belizeans are more receptive to adult women being called gal, but they're not receptive to adult men being called boys. And so and another thing I'm sensitive to is the terms of endearment, and both adult men and women do it. Babe, sweetheart, we don't have that level of intimacy. For us, we have a name, just call us by our name. So hold Dwight accountable.
I went, if it was offensive in any way, I went, be the first one to say, I apologize. You have to forgive me, please.
Forgiven.
Forgiven, Dwight, forgiven.
Teaching experience.
But demisexual is used to refer to somebody who has to have an emotional connection before there is a sexual attraction. Pansexual is somebody who is able to have a romantic or sexual relationship with anybody on the spectrum, whether the person is transgender, male to female, female to male, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not about your physical attributes, it's about you as a person. So if I'm dating you, Yaya, and then you realize that, you know what, I don't want to, I am not a female deep down, I feel like I'm a male, and then you transition to a male, I can still be in a relationship with you. While for other people, they struggle because they fell in love with a woman and they want a woman. So if you're transitioning to a man, then that's problematic for them, you know. And that's just the complexity of human emotions and human relationships that sociologists, you know, have difficulty coining and explaining. And so it boils down to the fact of the matter, which is, why do we need labels? Like, why do we need these labels?
But I want to ask a question here, Ruben. To what extent, having been out there in what we would consider the other community, which is the LGBT community, to what extent do you think that there are others who may be living and operating in the heterosexual community who feel very much the way you do, and are in a sort kind of, you know, the same kind of confusion that you were in at some point? To what can you hazard a guess as to the amount of people within the wider Belizean society who may be in similar situations?
All right. Firstly, do I using the term confused isn't sensitive. I would prefer that you use the term questioning, because it's not necessarily that you're confused, it's just that you don't have enough information to understand what's happening. And they say the greatest way to enslave a people is their mind, right? And we have been cultured in a society whereby lack of information has been the greatest weapon that has been used against us, and it's still being it's still being used. So I would boil down their inability to express themselves or to come out as being that of fear. Like, you're fearful. I mean, I was fearful. I could lose friends, I could have lost friends, I could have lost, you know, my job. And that's a lot to lose, because your friends are your safe haven. Some people lose family members, some people are kicked out of their homes, you know. And so having to deal with the trauma of all of that, you turn to what is most convenient, and the most convenient thing to do would be to be closeted. You know, that's the most convenient thing to do, to just hide who you are. Seemingly convenient, but it comes at the expense of your mental health, because that takes a toll on you at some point, and it's not healthy. And that's why these type of conversations are important, because the more we sensitize the public to the effects, the impact of homophobia, the more you'll be able to empathize and sympathize with our struggles as a vulnerable community. So that's my
Ruben,
take on that.
before you identified as lesbians, did you date brothers?
Yes, I was in a long-term heterosexual relationship for 8 years. Yes, I was. And I was happy in that relationship. I mean, I wasn't looking at other women or other men. I mean, I was committed. I'm very committed in my relationship. And even though I was with Allison, who was my first, you know, same-sex relationship, I didn't dibble dabble like some people would say you would do, you know, when you're coming out of a heterosexual relationship into a same-sex relationship. I didn't do any of that, because again, for me, it's about that connection. It's a relationship, and all the frills of a relationship, all the expectations of a relationship were the same in both my relationships, whether it was heterosexual or a homosexual relationship. It was the same.
So in sometimes I may not be able to form all my words because this is
right.
it's a lot of information that we're getting.
It's a lot.
Different information.
Heavy subject.
And you made a valid point of saying, why is there a need for labeling? And my understanding of labeling is because one is cultural, so it depends on the culture that you're in. Two, it informs people on if they'll interact with you or how they'll interact with you based on what they know or were conditioned to believe to be true. I would hope, whether people do it or not, that at minimum, as human beings, we'll be kind to each other. And the difficult part is to do so without judgment. So even as because I was born in a Western reality, when I was born and the people who were in my birthing process saw my genitalia, I was identified, I didn't have any choice in the matter. I was identified as a female, as a girl child. When I matured, I was identified as a woman child. No, I don't know, because I don't know, Ruby. I ask you because I don't know. I feel quite comfortable living in my skin with that identity. I have had me personally, have always been attracted to brothers, primarily brothers of color. Man, it do it for me, especially if they
Stay calm.
especially if they have some nothing on their
Stay
head.
calm.
It do it like, yo, it do
You
it
be
for
a
me.
serious start? You're serious
I
start, truly?
So I identify as a heterosexual, right? But that me. What I want to know for you, coming out of did you feel when you were in a heterosexual relationship, were you questioning at any point during that relationship?
During that relationship, no. Before that relationship, yes. I always knew growing up that, hey, I'm looking at the girls the way my brother them and my male friends are looking at the girls. And I couldn't understand that. And I really thought it was a phase. But when I met this person and then we had this amazing emotional attraction, I must admit, I'll be honest, there was a sexual attraction first. And then when I got to know her, then the emotional attraction, kicked in, and that really sealed the deal for me, because you have to be able to stimulate me intellectually for us to be in a relationship, so that was what it was like with her. But to say that, in my heterosexual relationship that I had wandering eyes, no. When I'm with someone, I'm committed with someone. And you see, this is the thing when it comes to sexuality, that we feel that it has to be within this box, like it has to be either or, that it can't be a combination or none of what's already presented to us, because you have people who are asexual, and even asexuality is confusing for some people to grapple with. Like, how can you not have any attraction, whether sexually or emotionally, to neither male nor female? Like, that's crazy for some people to grapple with, but yet it exists. It exists. And this is what we have to understand, that not everyone will fall within the boxes or the boxes, I'll say boxes. Not everybody will tick the same boxes that we will tick. Some people want boxes that others haven't even thought about should be there, like intersex. We select for sex, we have male or female. What happened to the intersex community?
We'll need to go to break. Before we go to break, just let me give you some food for thought. One of the conversations or the questions that you hear often is, are people from the LGBTQI plus communities, are they born this way? Are they socialized this way? Is it a trauma from lived relationships that made them choose this lifestyle? So with that, we'll take our second break for the morning, and we'll be right back.
With this one go.
Be the hero the world needs right now. Wash your hands.
When you bank your way, it's amazing how much time you have to enjoy the more important things in life. You have time for priceless moments, time to indulge, time to unwind, time to take in the view, time to make memories. Use any of these services and have time for the things that matter most. Bank your way and enjoy the convenience. Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
A Mandala notice. Our advertisers, sellers, and readers are advised that due to the Labor Day holiday on Friday, May 1st, there will only be the Friday issue of a Mandala, which will hit the streets on Thursday morning, April 30, 2020.
Smart is fully prepared for the demands on our network to facilitate those working from home and for customers to continue communicate with friends and family. With the entire country at home, our team has pushed for more innovative services and promotions like our double data along with new ways of purchasing mobile services via our app and agents countrywide. Smart is proud to have dedicated staff working from home as well as out in the field to keep communication flowing. Customers can also follow our online fitness, science, comedy, and other great segments to continue being active at home. Smart has also sponsored the Ministry of Health free hotline, along with gifting all our frontline medical personnel a prepaid number with $50 credit to stay in contact in these times. Be assured we are with you and look out for more weekly promotions on SMS, voice, and data. Be smart and be safe.
Your Belize City Council continues to work towards building a safer, healthier, and more efficient society for all residents to enjoy. The latest modification we've made is the installation of the new traffic light system at the corner of Neil Penn Road and Central American Boulevard. To ensure that the new system is risk-free for all citizens, we have prepared some traffic safety tips that should be kept in mind while traveling in the area. To our drivers, remember Neil Penn Road is now a one-way street, meaning it is illegal to turn left onto Neil Penn Road from the Central American Boulevard when driving in the direction of Cesar Ridge Road. It is illegal to turn right onto Neil Penn Road from the Central American Boulevard when driving in the direction of the Balkan Bridge. The Belize City Council, always about the people.
If you want to help save the world, sneeze into your elbow.
Patriots, all people who love them country, bad love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This a fi we, we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a fi we, we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell patriots, all people who love them country, bad love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This a fi we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a fi we da all people who love them country, bad love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This a fi we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a fi we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master, talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because this a fi we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Oh no, this a fi we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. I know we should always help our neighbor, especially in time of a natural disaster. But this is not the case with Guatemala. fi write a letter because
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
Lord have mercy.
Mr. Politician, we got to change the plans.
This a fi we, we da fi ya. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a fi we da fi ya. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Not an inch, not a foot, not a centimeter. We nago, give it to
So
Guatemala.
the final segment for our 15th edition of Sunday Review for 2020. I'm your host, Yaya Marin Coleman, co-host Dwight Neal, and our guest this morning, Ruby Reyes, LGBTQI plus activist. I got a text, and I was asking both Ruby and Dwight if anybody contact them since they're upon the show, because feedback matters. We're talking and we're having this conversation so that we may engage Belizeans and for them to share what their thoughts are. And someone sent me a text, and this is what the person said, and this is a person who generally, my position still is what your gender identity is nobody's business.
Yep.
That's my position. Within the context of this conversation and the person offering feedback, I'm identifying this person by gender. So this is a heterosexual male, and this is what the individual said. I'm listening to your show. I find that Ruby is an incredible force of courage and pedagogy. Her talking style is solid teaching. She is an amazing communicator, clear, concise, and coherent. I find her story to be a deep and powerful Belizean narrative of hope. I thank her for sharing such an inspirational and personal account of who she is and who she is still becoming. Respect. I get cold. See when I read that, Ruby.
Hey, that thing, it give me cold seas to yeah, because I always say, 6 years ago, I would never have done this. Never, ever. Not where I was teaching, not in the place that I was. But having gone through the motions, seeing the need to be able to speak out, because there are a lot of people who cannot speak out. I have to be able to use my platform, my voice to speak out for those people who really can't. Like, it's a life or death situation for some people. So Marcus Garvey said, when you have knowledge, you have to apply it, you have to share it. So that's what I am doing, because that quote really resonated with me. I have this information, it's needed information, and I will share it.
Thanks, Ruby. Dwight, somebody text you too, no?
Yes, they just said that while they identify as heterosexual as well, but they said they liked the discussion and they thought it was useful. So
Respect.
yeah, I think the big challenge for most of us as Belizeans is, as we've been saying over and over on the show, the way how we have been brought up, the culture that existed and continues to exist, which sees different as bad. You're black, you're different, you're bad. You're gay, you're different, you're bad. You're a Garifuna, you're different, you're bad. You're a Maya, you're different, you're bad. And we have to start, as a country, as a community, we have to start getting beyond that. When I worked with a World Bank project for about 4 years. And I had the opportunity to meet a variety of people. I literally worked from Sarteneja to Barranco. And I told people, I said, do not be concerned that I am a Creole from Belmopan or Belize City or wherever. I said, because my first obligation is to the country of Belize. If Belize does not progress, I know I progress. I can't progress. And I will have to migrate out of this country if I want to do so. So, and I say, a rising tide floats all boats. That is what we need to start to do. That is how we need to start to think in the country, that every single individual is important and has a role to play. So they may not share your point of view, they may not share the things that you like, but that does not mean that you should be discriminating or eliminating them from the conversation. And that has always been my concern. I tell somebody just recently, I say, I remember by virtue of being Creole in Dangriga when I was growing up, I used to get beat up. All right? And that was because of that. I can't change that, but I used to get beat up. And that is significant because it means that at some point you start to understand that there are inherent um, problems within our society that see anything that is different as bad or as being you have to get it out of the way. You have to do something about it. And but make I left it like that. I'd take up too much time. We gotta leave it left. Ruby,
Valid point, Dwight. Ruby, can you answer the question I had asked earlier about people ask if you're born as someone who identifies from the LGBTQI plus community?
I definitely think that for some people, their transition between one point and another has been their exploration of their sexuality, and they have brought on the notion that it's a choice. But I keep on saying that it's not a choice, it's not a phase, it's our life, it's our experiences, it's how we feel deep inside that can't be quantified with numbers, and that is why it makes it so hard for people to understand, because it's something innate and you can't really, like I said, quantify it, but I do believe that this was always in me. I don't think that I was socialized to be this way, because I mean, when you look at socialization, I have all the heterosexual examples to make reference to, but I still turned out to be gay. So I definitely don't think that um, it's a choice. I tend to move towards the belief of that it's how you're born. You're born this way. I mean, and the fact that I believe that we are born this way is because contrary to what people believe, that gay people can't be Christians, but I grew up in a very religious home, and scripture was a major part of what I grew up in. And going back to scripture, and Yaya, please allow me. It says, God doesn't give you more than you can bear. In Jeremiah 1:15, he said that before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and that we should love each other because love covers a multitude of sin. And in Romans, the Bible speaks about living in harmony with one another. And because I have my experiences is one that's multi-layered, being raised in a Christian home, being in a single parent home, being a black woman, a poor woman, all of those have helped me to come to this level of being. And it was all in me, for lack of a better word, it was all in me. And it's just me now embracing what was within me all this time, contrary to what society made me believe. So I definitely tend to move towards we were born this way, and if you were able to dibble dabble, then you probably don't belong in this community.
One of the other question that is often talked about and pushed back on is that in these types of relationships, you're not able to produce children. Could you speak on that?
My mic.
We hear you. We are hearing you.
All right. So that for me was a struggle as well. In my relationship, we do have a son that we're raising together, and we have spoken about the option in the future to for me becoming pregnant. I'm not comfortable with the idea because I mean raising Kyle is enough for me when it comes to motherhood, but people need to understand that because you're in a homosexual relationship, your reproductive organs don't automatically stop working. Like they're still working. And making reference to the great book that we like to quote, the Bible. Let's look at how Jesus was conceived. Mary was the first surrogate, and we glorify her as the first surrogate. There was
be careful, Miss Ruby.
There was no sexual intercourse that happened. We have to respect a woman's reproductive rights. She said she was pregnant. She was pregnant by the Holy Spirit, and we accepted that. Similarly, in this case, a gay couple can still have a child through surrogacy, and a lesbian couple can still have a child by having a sperm donor. So our reproductive organs do not stop working, and to say that all of humankind will come to a crash is definitely an exaggeration. We know many, many homosexual couples that have raised wonderful children, and so we can't use that as an excuse anymore. It's not an excuse.
So
one of the things that I push back on is that you have heterosexual people who also choose not to be parents. And so again, because of that domination of power, I agree we need to populate the earth, and we are. Globally, there's some you have the eugenics community who really wants to stop the population of the earth. So populating the earth, people having sex and having children, that is definitely happening. And before I give Dwight the mic, Ruby, also because you brought it up, and I have to tell you why Ruby says sorry, Yaya, is because I did not want to participate this morning in the single narrative of understanding or experiencing the LGBTQI plus community from a religious perspective. And so I was very intentional in us going in that direction. In all fairness to Ruby, in telling her truth, and her whole story is that she identifies as a Christian too. So before I give Dwight the mic, Ruby had said something to me that I thought was very interesting about her current status being in a same-sex relationship with a family. They have a son. And what that is like as a whole family and a Christian one. Can you just touch on that, please, Ruby?
All right. So again, that has been a part of exploration of self. I really struggled with the Christian part of my identity, and being in a homosexual relationship and raising a child. I didn't want to deprive him of how I was raised. And Alison is a very spiritual person, not to the sense of religion, but she does have this relationship with her another being, her God. And I wanted her to experience what I experienced growing up. And so we started attending church services together as a family. And that was, again, another transition, because we weren't sure how we would have been received, you know. And we attend Martin's church. We try to attend as often as we can. But we attended Martin's church because the priests are very accepting, and we noticed that other same-sex couples also attend that church. So they created really a safe space for us to worship as Christians. And for me, that was a big deal, because I went to a previous church that I will not name, that they said, right, blatantly, if you support abortion and you support that same-sex thing, don't come for the Holy Communion, which for Christian is a major part of our spirituality and our belief. So I didn't want to lose my spirituality. I didn't want to lose my respect for God, because, you know, that's what I grew up in, and I wanted my family to be a part of that. And I was privileged, and I will say privileged. I was privileged enough to find a church that offered that safe space. So that was what it was like, you know, raising a family within the context of this vulnerable group.
Respect, Dwight?
No, she touched on most of what I wanted to ask about. I, but interestingly, when you started to quote scripture, I thought that maybe you grew up in an evangelical um, kind of environment because that's where I grew up primarily. We basically own Faith Assembly of God at Dangriga for a long time. We were the only people. There were like three families who basically kept that church open. So when you started quoting scripture, I was a little bit amused. But my question to you would be, to all the people who say that you would be confusing the children when you raise them in a same-sex environment, what do you say?
You would be surprised how children are able to understand. I mean, they're able to understand a lot more than adults are able to understand. And I must admit that Kyle, our son that we're raising, has really helped me through my own journey because he loves his mother unconditionally. And she's masculine presenting, and so he has to deal with his friends when she goes to school to check on him, to pick up report card. And, they would be like, but the who that man report you to call mommy? That I know a man. And then he'll be like, why you stupid? See she got titi da my boy. And so for them it's the innocence of it. Like they and the kids, they drop it right away. Like they don't, it's not confusing for them. It's I hold on to the fact that it's really adults who have the issue, and they're trying to pass it down to children and say that the children will be confused. No, the children, they know exactly who they are and they know who they are not. So when a child at a young age tells you, and this is true for transgender children who sometimes have to deal with gender dysphoria, which is sometimes used to explain, transgender persons, why they feel the way they feel. But a child with gender dysphoria from a very young age knows that this body that I'm in isn't the body that I supposed to be in. And they are the ones who will be confused because society is the one who tells them, but you have to be this. But deep down the child knows, this isn't me. And then that leads to other mental health issues because that child isn't given the opportunity to explore what they're feeling. And parents don't have the enough information to explain to their children what's happening. So when somebody says you're confusing the child, my question to them is the child really confused, or is it that you're confused and you're unable to explain to the child why that child then becomes confused? And this is why we need to educate ourselves. I mean, we live in a country, we live in a world where there are so many different types of people, and we have to familiarize ourselves with that fact that there are so many types of people out there, and those people exist. We might not be able to explain or understand their existence, but we have to be able to respect that. And I feel like that's the basic request that I have of parents. Just teach your child that they have to respect these people. Don't teach your child that they should hate them, that they should ostracize them, that they are weird. Don't teach your child that. Instead, teach your child that these people exist and they should be respected. It's as simple as that. And respect is a simple concept to explain to children.
I agree.
Ruby, I would hear people say, I respect that, I
But
respect that, and then in
Then
the
the butt
same
come.
breath,
in the butt.
use derogative terms
Yeah.
about. And so in your sharing on Facebook after Ulysses Terry, or Ulysses Roca as he's also known, on your Facebook, you call up people on their hypocrisy, and I really salute the courage that you have, and like you shared, you recognize that it's still a risk whenever you're public about who you really are. So I want you to address, before we close off, why you why do you feel that Belize, which is overall the country is identified as a homophobic country, and you would hear people say, "Nah, it's homophobic as Jamaica," but still homophobic. That I've found that there seems to be more tolerance for lesbian couples than there are for gay men.
Yeah.
Which I'm thinking that is hypocritical. If it's a position that you do not support, I don't get it.
Well, Dwight is smile because Dwight know exactly why they're more receptive of lesbians.
Wait, stick a pin then, stick a pin. Make a hair, Dwight then. Dwight, make a hair.
It has to do, remember we live in a male-dominated society, and it's seen as a greater threat to have men who identify that way than to have women. Women are seen as less threatening, and so as a result, there is a lot more. It's almost as if we are brought up in this culture where we are taught that men are supposed to be certain things, men are supposed to do certain things, and whenever you deviate from that, you are bringing dishonor, you're bringing this, whatever have you. You're threatening our existence as males. And for that reason, the women we don't really care about, but the men, we don't want to be white and behave like that. And I think that is the real reason. And you catch me, Miss Ruby, you really catch me for now on. That is the real reason why we tend to be not so much concerned about what the women are doing as much as what the men are doing. And we are also afraid that they might come to us with, according to one of my friends, they are coming to me with their nastiness. And I am saying, if a woman came to you and said, "I like your body," what would you tell her if you did not want her to like your body? You would tell her, "Go away." So if a man came to you and said, "I like your body," tell her, "Go away." It's the same thing. But in our culture, if a woman came to me as a man and said, "I like your body," it's almost as if I have an obligation to tell her, "All right, sit here." Right? And no, and there have been instances in my past where I have been accused of being homosexual because I've told women, "No, I am not interested." Where to go and you the batty man? And I said, "No, I am just not interested. Is there something totally wrong with that?" All right? It's almost as if my right to choose went out the window when a woman approached me because I'm supposed to be all accepting because you're a woman. And the way I was brought up, that is not so. You retain the right to choose, the right to make that decision at every step. And so that was one of the reasons I was kind of chuckling there in the background because it's this thing where we have all kinds of weird standards in the community, and as individuals, both heterosexual and homosexual, we are afraid to step out of that box and say who we really are. And for me, I've always been accused of being insensitive because if I don't want, I don't want.
Right.
Whether a boy, girl, anything, it doesn't really matter to me. I retain the right to choose. And if I say no, then just like in the case of a woman where no means no, in my case, if I say no, no means no. Finish. Right? Whatever works for her works for me as well.
Respect to catch up on Nagel because it just drop on. Well, that truth. Salute to your courage to say all that, Dwight. Ruby, go ahead.
And also, it has to do with the over sexualization of women as well, and our as sexual beings. The media plays a major role in that, in the way how women are portrayed. And you know, women are portrayed. Two women together is basically a man's dream, you know, and that is an image that has been pushed in the media. Similarly, Dwight, and I'll pick up on what you said, your resistance to the being hit on you as an individual would calmly um, refuse, right, the advances. Now, the media plays a role in how we behave towards LGBT persons. And that's why when I made my post, I said, when you're there in at the club and the song come on, boom, bye bye in a Batman face, and bad man now apologize to no Batman, right? That sets the precedence as to how we should treat gay people, right? And these are the music that we listen to has a major impact on how we behave as individuals. You know, as somebody who listens to a lot of violent music tends to be a very violent person, and somebody who, you know, listens to reggae or calmer music tends to be more conscious and self-aware. So the way we've been socialized, whether it's at home, the music that we listen to, the conversations that we have with persons around us, all of those have an impact on how we treat other people and how we behave in certain situations. So I must commend you for the way you behaved in that particular situation, because I'm sure it was a very uncomfortable one. Anytime anybody makes unwanted advances to you, it's an uncomfortable situation. But I can just imagine somebody from, you know, the same sex who you have absolute no interest in, you know, how unnerving that would be. And in that moment, that's where you need to be mindful as to how you will react. Will I react with violence, or will I react in a way that's, you know, dismissive but in a calmer manner? And that's the respect, because you reacted in a calmer manner out of respect to that individual, you know. But if you don't like them, if there's hate in your heart, then you would have reacted very, very differently.
I think a lot of who I am has to do with the fact that I came out of a single parent family. When I was growing up as a 10, 12 years old, just to be the child in a single parent family was considered a bad thing in Belize, and you were discriminated against. Then I lived at Dangriga. No, this is real. The idea that you didn't have a mother and a father in the house was a big deal, and you were discriminated against in various ways. Then, as I said before, that Dangriga, you had this Garifunai Creole thing, and so some days I couldn't cross the main bridge at Dangriga to get home. All right, because I mean I get beat up after the swim beach side and all kind of thing. All right, so I grew up with that kind of situation. So it kind of became natural for me to be tolerant of people in certain circumstances. If you had no control over your circumstance, or your circumstance was not impacting my life in a negative way, then why am I bothered? Why am I going out of my way to be unkind to you? And so that and that was the sort of tenet that was taught to us growing up. My mother was a teacher in her first life, and then she worked at BL for many years. But that teacher in her kept coming out, and she kept teaching us throughout her life that these are the things you need. You know, she tried to instill in us. You need to practice good habits, develop tolerance, do this, do that, be spiritual. She made sure that we were at church every weekend. So that is the nature that I developed over time. Maybe I'm born with it, I don't know. But I have been tolerant of people as long as you are basically behaving like a normal human being.
Let me thanks Dwight for sharing that real story of, besides of oftentimes how we experience life informs who we are. And so salute to sharing that story. Ruby, I have to squeeze in here before we go. One last question, and then I'll ask you to wrap with your final thoughts. Another concern I often hear from the community is that because I'm a woman and you're a lesbian, then I don't want to be a friend. I don't want to be around you. I don't want to be seen with you because it's as if it's contagious. And and I really want you to speak on that. And I would often say to people, the same way I'm not attracted to every brother that I see, and because I'm attracted to brother with locks, it's not every brother with locks that I'm attracted to. I would think it works the same way for any other gender. Can you speak on that, please?
It does. It does. And that's why for me it's important as an activist to speak out and to speak on these things, because people need to understand that we're no different. This difference is sort of an illusion that we're creating to protect ourselves, probably. But there is no difference. I mean, I am not trying to turn anybody or convince anybody to be anything except to be respectful of who I am as an individual. That is all I am trying to do. And rightfully, like you said, yes, I am attracted to both men, women. I've noticed that I have attraction to trans men. But that doesn't mean that any trans man or any woman or any man I will be, attracted to. No, it doesn't work that way, and this is why we need to understand that you're dealing with human emotions. It's not something that you can just switch on and switch off the way you see fit. It's something that's really innate in you. And in my post, I alluded to that you know what, I wish I could have switched off my gayness so I could have been normal and exist in peace at where I was at the time, but I couldn't. It's just a part of me. And even though I was where I wasn't trying to turn my students into lesbian or tell them, oh, be lesbian. No, that's not what I was doing. I was still doing my duties as professionally as I could, and I wanted my students, them to respect me as a person, and that was all I was asking for. That's all I am still asking for. Respect me as a person. And if there is something that you don't understand, I am open enough to be able to educate you and to shed light on any misconception that you might have.
Before we ask you to wrap, let me share a final text. It was a powerful show. Ruby is a force. She speaks.
I think you read that one already.
No, I just get it. Ruby is a force. She speaks her truth. It is a conversation that was necessary and timely, and one that we need to have more often. Thank you. And to my knowledge, the person who sent it is a heterosexual female. Okay. And so your final thoughts, Ruby, before we close off today's show.
All right. I would like to say this to my to really my LGBT friends, just as this, because this is a part of me letting my light shine. I'm doing this for you guys, and I want you guys to remember that you're not alone, and that even though we would want progress to be faster, this is a part of that progress. And I must commend Krem for taking on this initiative, Yaya for taking the bull by its horn to have this conversation. Dwight, you were extremely receptive to what the information that was shared, and to the viewers who sent positive feedback, and of course some concerns. But I really do appreciate being able to be here, to be able to share my truth, and in hopes that others will be able to shine their light and be comfortable enough to live their truth. Because it's not easy to be living a lie or to be living in the closet. The closet is a place where clothes only should be stored, not people. So come out of that closet, live your truth when it's safe. Don't do it now because Ruby says go and do it, but do it when it's safe, when you're safe enough, and that there are resources available. So I just wanted to end with that.
Respect. Let me just share with you, Ruby. You use the word that oftentimes Belizean people use, and I know it's because of the United States influence. The word guys means men. only. Yes. And so I just wanted, especially as a lesbian person and living from that community, that you're aware of that, and for our listeners and viewers to know that when you use guys, you're excluding all the other genders.
Yeah.
And so, Dwight, thank you, Dwight. I am so pleased with your participation today. I had my concerns. Your truth was just poetic. I really appreciate your level of honesty that you had as a brother who benefits from the patriarchy of being of identifying as a heterosexual male and able-bodied. To our listeners and viewers, Ruby, thank you for agreeing. And I've said to Ruby, it was just the time. I just felt that this was the time for this conversation, and it couldn't be anyone. Ruby is my sister. I know her, and I honestly, ignorant me, did not realize how powerful Ruby would be to speak on this real conversation, real way of being in Belize, because she's an educator and because she's a popular educator. That did not factor in my mind at all until I'm in the moment listening to her have the conversation. I'm like, oh my goodness. For me, it could not have been anyone else. And so it's all about timing. And there are more people online now because we're indoors, because of the COVID-19 reality. And so thank you, sister. Thank you for family members who have been accepting, who have shifted their mindset to accept other people as beings with different genders. I will continue to hold other family members and friends who are struggling, who have really canceled out other human beings out of their lives because they identify as a different gender, that will just take a moment to just be still and think about times in your life when you were not accepted, when people were not kind to you. And imagine what it must be like for those people, or for anybody, to live a life that is not full, to not be kind to other people. And so thanks to Master Chief Operator Christy in Krem TV, JCR Zoo, Chief Engineer at Krem Radio. And I would often say to people, Zinc Fence is not a media house that muzzles their employees. They're on-air personalities. Zinc does not muzzle people. So I did not need to get clearance before I had this show. X would often say, the people, it's up to the people. And the people really have the power to create any kind of reality. And so I'm appealing to Belizean people as it relates to people from the LGBTQI plus community in Belize, to see them as human beings. And even if you do not agree with how they live their lives, at minimum, be kind. This show will repeat at 5:30 this evening on Krem Television. Thanks again, Ruby. Thanks, Dwight. Until next Sunday, have a beautiful day.
This one goes out to all patriots, all people who love them country bad, love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This happy we, we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala.